known, Corry is my name. I'm not a member of the family, I'm a member of the congregation here in Ardclough, and with your permission and with Father Willie's permission, I'll spend the next 4 or 5 minutes expressing the gratitude of our community for the presence of Pauline, who came in 1974 and blew through our community like a warm summer breeze, changing everything, changing the way we looked at ourselves, at our community and at all communities, and leaving a mark which will be probably with us forever. The gentle daughter of the Shannon was an extraordinary woman. She got us to dress up as vegetables. And she did this with this enormous persuasive power, because it wasn't like Pat Short in that hurling dressing room, hectoring people. She had a beautiful phrase when you think of it. It's only neighbours entertaining neighbours. So people who would be shy, wouldn't be, used to presenting themselves on a stage. Neighbours entertaining neighbours was what Pauline used, which makes sense, except that Ardclough ended up on the stage of the National Concert Hall. And Pauline's ability to nurse people along, nurture people along, as Father Willie said, the planting of seeds. They're the flowers from her own garden here. She was thoughtful to the last, did not want flowers to interfere with the celebration of the Mass. And she planted seeds all through our community. Pauline was born in Limerick, in Mallow Street in Limerick, and she was the third of 4 children of Tom Callanan and Alice Stack. Her brothers, Dennis, John and Michael, are here. You will be able to commiserate with them. And at the age of about 4, she moved to Rathban. That's where she grew up. She also suffered a tremendous loss at the age of 9 when her father died. And from then, Pauline dedicated herself to life, living it and indeed saving it. She was a star student in Sexton Street presentation, and from there she went to Kevin Street to study Med Lab, qualified, went back to Limerick to work, then moved to Galway, not because she was promoted, but because she identified she wanted to do more with her career. And that career in medicine, which was parallel to the Pauline we knew here in Ardclough, continued to strive for perfection and strive to be ambitious. And she was involved in the development of the PDA operations for newborn babies, a big heart looking after small hearts, as it were. The doctor from Japan, now based in Japan, who worked with her in that project, came back to see her last year. The famous pen pal, Renata, that Father Willie alluded to, lived in Munich, and Pauline invited her to Limerick in 1971. And then, what happened next? Munich, 1972, Pauline got to go to the Olympics. Her appetite for world-famous sporting events had been whetted by the Munich Olympics. So the following year, she came to see Ardclough play Eoghan in the county final. And some of you will know that the Munich Olympics was a particularly tragic event in sporting history, when the kidnap attempt went fatally wrong and a lot of people were killed. Nobody was killed at Ardclough versus Eoghan. That year, anyway. Because Pauline had met a handsome hurler. When she was in Bolton Street, he was in Kevin Street. And Pauline Johnson was playing for Ardclough that day. She came from Galway to watch the match, and she was really impressed. All she could hear was, "Well done, Johnson, great tackle, Johnson, great point, Johnson." She thought she was going out with Superman. It was many months later she discovered that Micheál had a brother Tom on the Ardclough team and a clatter of cousins on the Eoghan team. All of them called Johnson. She loved to travel. She did Australia, she did Japan 4 times. Herself and Micheál were inveterate travellers. They spent a lot of time in Portugal. She also, for people who are not familiar with Ardclough, all our celebrities here have 4 legs. And Pauline would be a stalwart for the racing festivals, for Galway, Leopardstown. Never made it to Cheltenham in March because I suspect there's a secret code that probably goes on there, but enough about that. And then Ardclough, she had crazy ideas. In 1998, she entered the tidy towns. We're not even a town. So what are we doing in the tidy towns? We got 150 marks. Pauline, before the French turned the gilet jaune into a fashion accessory and then a movement, she was wearing one out, picking, clearing the hedges, and she decided entering the tidy towns would give us an incentive to pick up litter. And from there, Ardclough had some 50-odd projects in last year's tidy towns and finished 7th in the county. It was all grass swirls and biodiversity and pollinators. I don't know what the academic, peer-reviewed definition of a pollinator was, but I'm pretty sure Pauline Johnson was one, buzzing around and leaving everything blooming in her wake. It's sometimes said when you're doing a funeral, when people are at funerals, that it's a little bit of a celebration of the one person, it's a one man. Communities don't work like that. Pauline doesn't work like that. Pauline was one of a group always. She was never putting herself forward. There are hundreds of photographs of Pauline. You'll notice that she's never pushing herself to the front row in any of them. And she's not looking at the camera in most of them. The photograph on her coffin was taken at the celebration of 50 years after Ardclough's 1968 achievement of bringing home 5 cups to a small community. She's not looking at the camera. She wasn't that sort of person. It wasn't her style. Even me talking about her here would make her uncomfortable. There might be a rap from the coffin any stage now. And then the pantomimes, which she wrote and scripted and persuaded neighbours to entertain neighbours. Goldilocks from 1988. Goldilocks went a little bit askew on one of the nights, and there was a little bit of improvisation. I think it was Tommy Bugle had to improvise on the stage. Now, nothing untoward was said. There was nothing that wouldn't be on a sitcom at the time. But the unfortunate Father Marr, who was the guest of honour on the night, didn't realise that this was going to happen. So he wrote a strongly worded letter to Pauline on the script, which he'd never written, which was improvised. Cinderella, Troubled Bachelors, even the name. The Ardclough Chalice. What these dramas did was they were confusing plots. They brought in local references, hurling references, racing references, political references. To give you an example, the Ardclough Chalice went missing. And a tribunal of inquiry was set up that lasted 4 years. And Justice Three Houses O'Shoney was in charge of the tribunal of inquiry. Another local reference from the time. And red, yellow and black are the colours of the Ardclough hurling team. You will have seen it with the Guard of Honour. So, as Father Willie said, none of us were immune from the jokes. Mr. Johnson appeared in the story, the plot line for the Ardclough Chalice. Why does Mr. Johnson wear red, yellow and black braces? And the answer, of course, was to stop his trousers falling down. It's really a tribute to Pauline that even though the drama that she wrote and scripted is, she was no longer involved in that the people who brought Ardclough drama to the All-Ireland final of Scoring and Oak last year were the sons and daughters of the cast in the Troubled Bachelors and the Ardclough Chalice. I suspect that in 30 years' time, there will be more drama from Ardclough. There will be the same spirit of competing at a high level. And that people who've never heard of Pauline Johnson will be carrying on a tradition that she started, that flame that she lit in Ardclough and that flickered. And they won't even know who she was, but she will be the one who can ultimately say that she was the start of that. And I think she would have preferred it that way. Thank you, Pauline Johnson, for all you've done for our community. We knew we lived in a heavenly spot around the loch beside Ardclough, but did not celebrate it enough till Pauline came our way. We found we had community, that progress grows with unity, and saw new opportunities when Pauline came our way. She taught us all life was a stage, neighbours dressed in camouflage, that performance was a privilege when Pauline came our way. She lived her life of humour, and in 2008, the dreaded tumour, my demise, she said, was just a rumour. Pauline intended to stay. God sent another hill to climb, a lady not yet past her prime. The stage door closed for the last time, and Pauline passed away. Thank you very much.